Good morning. It's not good morning, good evening. Booktube, YouTube, this is Johnny. It is 7:38 at night here in West Michigan. It is October the 17th. It is a Monday. Flow, time, circle of light. That's not my new mantra. 7:38, Monday. I'm still alone. My wife is out in Colorado visiting our daughter Beth and her 4 kids and her husband Andy. Andy left today. He's an engineer. He had to go to Idaho for some project he's on. So my wife is there. And this week, little Nora Jean, the youngest, will have her second birthday, I think this coming Sunday. Next Monday, Lord willing, my wife will fly home back here. But we never know. The Russians could start an atomic war, a nuclear war. We could all be obliterated. And then we go into the eternal state. God will bring in the new creation, the kingdom of glory, and life in God will continue. But anyway, in this video, I've been mentioning in my videos, I have used book haul. I've got these from thrift stores, the Book Nook, the library used bookstore, the Book Nook, where I volunteer on Mondays and Fridays. I volunteered today. I got one used book, but I don't think I have it here with me. I think I left it upstairs. Yeah, I don't think I have it here. If I do, I don't see it. Anyway, these are thrift store books and Book Nook books. And I looked through my videos and I don't think I've shown these used books. So here it goes. I did show you when we went to Cheap Stacks, the Grand Haven Library used bookstore, I found an art history by Ian Pierce. I found the Bellini bust. But this is the one I mentioned in my video I got from the Book Nook, the Raphael Affair, Ian Pears. These are art history mysteries. I collect them. I got this from the Book Nook. This is by Maggie O'Farrell. This is Hamnet, a novel of the plague. I collect her writings. I just started collecting them. I think she's an Irish writer. I think she's from Ireland, if I remember correctly. It says here, one of the best books of the year, The Washington Post, NPR, Entertainment Weekly, Christian Science Monitor, Parade, Literary Hub. I think she is. Let me see if I can find anything here. I have a couple of her novels in my collection. Oh yeah, born in Northern Ireland in 1972, Maggie O'Farrell grew up in Wales and Scotland. She is the author of 8 novels. She has written a memoir, I Am, 17 Brushes with Death, a picture book for children. She lives in Edinburgh, so I picked that up at the Book Nook. I found this at the Book Nook. This is Thurber's Dog. As you know, I collect books by the New Yorker writers and illustrators and cartoonists. And anyway, this is James Thurber. He's one of the original New Yorkers. This is Thurber's Dogs. And a lot of these Thurber books came into the Book Nook, and so I've been adding them to my James Thurber collection. You can see his cartoons on I think there's like a illustration like Thurber. I have his writings, his letters. I have biography. This is James Dickey, To the White Sea, a novel. He wrote the famous novel Deliverance. I have this in paperback over there on the shelf, but a hardback came into the Book Nook. And I just started collecting him. He was born, James Dickey was born in Atlanta, one of America's best known poets. I have a book of poetry of his over there too on the books. So I think he wrote poetry, novels, criticism, and nonfiction. I just collect his writings. This is Descartes' Bones, the Skeletal History of Conflict Between Faith and Reason. I have a couple of books by Russel, Shorto. I have his book on Amsterdam, the city of Amsterdam, and I have his book Island of the Center of the World, which is about early Manhattan, New York. He wrote Gospel Truth, Saints and Madmen, which I don't have. But this one is a signed edition. It's to Jim and Donna with great thanks. Something, see, it's a sign. So I have, this is a nonfiction, but you can check it out. I just collect his writings and it came into the Book Nook. I also bought this at the Book Nook. This is on natural, what the category would this be in? This is science, molecular aspects. Anyway, it's called The Tangle Tree, A Radical in the History of Life by David Quammen. I have his book, The Song of the Dodo Bird, which is, wait a minute, I'll go show it to you. It's over here. He wrote this book, The Song of the Dodo, Island Biography in the Age of Extinctions. So, and this book came in by him, and I have this one already. I like reading about science, biology, things, you know, the history of science. I collect these old penguins. This is by H.G. Wells, The War of the Worlds. I suppose you call this fantasy, science fiction. But I like these old penguins. There's a picture of them in the back. H.G. Wells. This is another penguin, The Druids by Stuart Piggott. And I read about the Druids in the... Once in a while I come across, and this is in the history of the Druids. And so I picked it up from my penguin collection. The Druids. This one too on the Celts by Nora Chadwick, a penguin about the Celts. I collect books on Celtic spirituality, things like that. So this is a book I got the Book Nook, Apollo, Handbook of Faulkner, a complete guide to the works of William Faulkner by Dorothy Tuck. I have up there, and I'll show them to you in a minute. I have up there William Faulkner's works. See them? These are all William Faulkner collection. Up there's all Henry James, but that's all Faulkner. So I got the this guide on Faulkner came into the Book Nook, this thing to put up there with my Faulkner collection. Handbook of Faulkner, Complete Guide to the Works of William Faulkner by Dorothy Tuck. And I thought it'd be kind of, you know, it looked pretty interesting. I added it to my Faulkner collection. I collect books, you know, travel books from all over the world. This is on the Himalayas, and the Himalayas are journeys through Nepal, Tibet, and Bhutan by Jeremy Bernstein. I keep this up here. This is by Peter Matheson. East of Lo Matang, Land of the Mustangs. This is on the same area. Of course, Peter Matheson wrote The Snow Leopard about up in the Himalayas, but this is really a nice book. So I collect books on the Himalayas, Tibet, Nepal. So I got this. This is a book called Fur, Fortune, and Empire, the Epic History of the Fur Trade in America by Eric J. Dolan. I have his other book, which is on the, it's over there, but I won't go over there and get it. It's on Leviathan, the History of Whaling in America. I have that. And this is his book. I got this from the Book Nook. The Fur, Fortune, and Empire, the Epic History of the Fur Trade in America by Eric J. Dolan. So I have this, his other book on the history of whaling in America. This book I found at Gateway Center, which is the Holland Rescue Mission thrift store. This goes into my Winston Churchill collection. I got rid of a lot of those, but I kept some of my Churchill books. You know, he wrote books, biographies, but this is the one that looked kind of interesting. No More Champagne, Churchill and His Money by David Lulth. Yeah, it looked kind of interesting, and so I grabbed it a couple weeks ago. So I added this to my Winston Churchill collection. This is a memoir called A Fortunate Life by A.B. Facey, a classic in Australian writing, unforgettable. It's like a memoir, and it was first published in, I think it was like first published in 1981. It's just a memoir of a common person in from his childhood up and through his life. I don't know, I collect memoirs. See, like here, Journey, 1908 to 1909. So just about his life. And so I just grabbed it from the Book Nook when it came in. This is Elizabeth Strout, Oliver again. I collect Elizabeth Strout. I thought I had this, but when I looked at my Elizabeth Strout collection, it wasn't in there. And she's one of my favorite female writers. She wrote, you know her books. She wrote Amy and Isabel, which I really enjoyed. She wrote Olive Kittredge, Abide With Me, Anything Is Possible, My Name Is Lucy Barton, The Burger's Voice. She's really a great writer. Well, I don't know about great, but I really like her writing, so I got this from the Book Nook. This came into the Book Nook, Metropolis, A History of the City, Humankind's Greatest Invention by Ben Wilson. I collect books on cities, the history of cities, ancient, modern, New York City, New York, Paris, France, London. But this is on the history of the city at Metropolis. This is on Aubrey Beardsley, who was I don't know, an illustrator back in the early 20th century. You've seen his drawings. He's pretty famous. I have a couple of biographies of him, but these are of his drawings. So this goes into my Charles Beardsley collection. I have a couple of biographies. This goes into my Ron Dahl collection, Revolting Rhymes. I collect his writings and his illustrations. But he doesn't illustrate this. The illustrator is by Quentin Blake. But I collect Ron Dahl's books. I suppose you might call them children's books, but I think they're also for adults. Oh, here's that book I got at the Book Nook today. The Voice of the Desert, a Naturalist Interpretation by Joseph Wood Krutch. I have a couple of books of his. He wrote a book on Samuel Johnson, like a biography. He was kind of like a Renaissance man. He wrote literary criticism. He wrote biographies. But I read on the internet tonight that he got some kind of respiratory kind of sickness and he moved to the Southwest for the climate. And he lived in Arizona and he wrote a book about the desert. He wrote two books, The Desert and The Voice of the Desert. And he wrote also about other places like Baja, California. Anyway, this is his The Voice of the Desert, The Naturalist Interpretation by Joseph Wood Krutch. I also bought recently his biography on Henry David Thoreau. So I got this at the Book Nook today. It came in. These next four books, when my wife was gone, I told her before she went to Denver, she spent 4 days with, every year, my wife goes away with 4 old girlfriends. Well, this year, only 2 could go. One, I won't go into a very long story why the third one couldn't come, but so my wife and 2 of her other friends that she's known longer than me, they go someplace and they spend a couple of days together just talking and doing stuff together. But this year they went back to Wisconsin, Dover County, and they don't go that place every year, but they've done it in the past. But there's a used bookstore where they stay at, and my wife called me on the phone, and she was looking through the biographies, and she said, do you want this biography or whatever? And these are 4 biographies my wife bought me when she was with her girlfriends in Dover County, Wisconsin. This is by Penelope Fitzgerald. I have her writings right over there. I have a whole 9 of her novels, but she wrote a biography, Penelope Fitzgerald, on the Knox brothers, and who were in 1977, before she turned her hand to fiction, she wrote The Knox Brothers and Gratitude for the Legacy, a tribute to her father, her uncles, and all that was lasting in their world. It was acclaimed upon its initial publication as a model biographical writing. In light of her later work, it can now be seen as something more, a self-portrait in value as the most deeply personal of all her books. So my wife got me that. And then I collect books on Malraux, and this is a biography of him by Axel Madson. I have his writings, Malraux. I have them all way over the other side of the room. And I have another biography, but I didn't have this one. And so I also, I think this, I don't think I have anything else by him, Axel Madson, but she picked this biography. You know, he's the There's a picture of him. Not right there is him. And this is on him. This was a biography on Melbourne by David Cecil. I have a couple of biographies of David Cecil. I just picked up a biography of him on Charles Lamb, and I have other biographies, but this is his biography of Melbourne. The first time in England, David Cecil's The Young Melbourne and Lord M now appear in one volume. He has always been the author's intention that this should be so. The book was divided into 3 parts. Okay, anyway, Melbourne lived from 1779 to 1848. He was not only the man, but the whole period is marvelously brought to life in this established classic. Anyway, he was Prime Minister under Queen Victoria. And this is a life by Olympia on the life of Victor Hugo, who wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame and all kinds of classic novels. But this is by Andre Maurois, who I collect biographies by him. And this is his biography, The Life of Victor Hugo. Yeah, he wrote a lot of biographies. I have his on Disraeli. He wrote one on Byron, Dickens. Proust. I have the one on Proust, or Proust, by him. Anyway, my wife got this me on Victor Hugo, Olympia, The Life of Victor Hugo. So those are the books. And today, as far as what I've been reading, I finally finished Victor Serge, The Last Times. I wrote in my diary after reading this, there's some books or novels where something you read and it has changed you. You feel that your world is different, that your perception of the world is different, that you have been impacted by somebody's writing. And this Victor Serge is really worth reading. I've really enjoyed his writings. And this book I highly recommend this. And I showed you, I start reading his Men in Prison by Victor Serge. This is incredible work too. I mean, it's just, you have to read him. I showed you, I got this one recently, The Case of Konrad Togoleviev by Victor Serge. And I already had this one, Victor Serge, Anarchists Never Surrender, Essays, Polemics, and Correspondence, and Anarchism, 1908 to 1938 by Victor Serge. These have all been translated out of French. And I already had these. I've read these in the past. The Memoirs of a Revolutionary by Victor Serge, which really got me into his writings. And then Notebooks, 1936 to 1947 by Victor Serge. I'm almost tempted to just reread these or get back into them. It's just incredible writer. And the way, even though it's just the way he perceived the world and how he wrote about it. And you might not agree with his politics, but he really can write. So I plan to get all his books. The New York Review Books has published a lot of his books. Almost in the back it says here, Victor Serge. Conquered City I don't have by Victor Serge. Unforgiving Years by Victor Serge I don't have. So I plan to buy more of his works. in the upcoming years. But what I want to do is, and the next time I get into him, I'm going to read this. I was reading some of it last night before I went to bed. A couple of chapters. It's really, really great. So that's the used books from thrift stores, the Book Nook, what my wife got me, biographies. I love biographies. I like reading biographies because I keep a diary. I have since I was in high school, since 1968. I like reading letters. I like reading memoirs, autobiography. It fascinates me how many people that live on this planet we know nothing about, and then there are people that leave behind some record of their lives, or they leave diaries, or they leave letters or memoirs, or somebody writes about their life. And as you read their life, you can read about not only their life but the times that they lived in. I like reading biographies and looking at the history that the time that they lived through. And that's why I like reading history and reading about history through the lives of men and women, poets, painters, writers, politicians, journalists, explorers, travelers, dreamers. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you these books. Like I said, this is a Monday here in West Michigan. I can't find my... It's a Monday, and my wife doesn't come back until next Monday. I got a book coming in the mail tomorrow, which is a Christian book on hermeneutics. I thought about showing you my books on Christian hermeneutics. I'm really into hermeneutics, biblical interpretation, the history of biblical interpretation. That's why I read the Ancient Commentary series, the Reformation Commentary series, why I read about medieval exegesis, things like that, biblical, how we interpret the Bible, the history of interpretation of the Bible, and things like that. So I got that book coming in the mail tomorrow. As far as that, tomorrow, it's been rainy and it's cold. It's supposed to snow. I have to see my therapist tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And because the weather is going to be bad tomorrow, I probably won't visit any thrift stores on the way home from the therapist. I'll just come home and read and write and look at the birds. So I hope you're having a good reading week. I thank you for your comments. I'll download this video. And until next time, bye.